Dr. Robert Williams. The peppery Welshman who led pioneer Otago's dissident little enemy, but was also a skilled surgeon whose medical skills were a valuable addition to the settlement's limited resources. Dr. Robert Williams is one of those pioneer characters about whom relatively little is known, mainly because he died very early in 1862. But despite this relatively brief colonial career, he's a really important figure in the early settlement, both as one of its first doctors and also because he was the leader of that political faction known as the Little Enemy. This group of Little Enemy was composed mainly of English settlers with Anglican backgrounds who vigorously contested the Scottish and Presbyterian dominance of the early settlement, and thereby added a real touch of colour to its communal life. Williams was from a Welsh background, though he actually seems to have been born in England. One source giving his birthplace as near Bristol, while another says it was Sunnybank near Gloucester. Nonetheless, in Otago he was always identified as Welsh. Dr. Robert Fulton, for instance, in his History of Early Doctors in Otago, describes him as rather peppery and impetuous in temper, like so many Welshmen. Williams was educated at Bristol, then attended Oxford University, before undertaking medical training in London, where he qualified as a surgeon in 1839. He received instruction from some of the leading surgical and pharmaceutical authorities of the day, and he kept up with new developments such as the use of chloroform for anaesthesia, even after coming to Otago. In 1839, he married Sarah Hazel, a young widow with one daughter. And in the 1841 census, they were recorded as living here in Church Lane, Harwell in Berkshire, where they had further children of their own. But after 7 years' practice here, for some reason, Williams decided to emigrate to the newly established Scottish settlement in Dunedin. Working as a ship's surgeon on the Benicia, his whole family sailed cabin class for New Zealand and arrived in Otago at the end of 1848. But finding a doctor already in residence and with a tiny founding population to look after, Dr. Williams bought some land on the edge of the Taieri plain here and set himself up as a farmer. The doctor's section was at Matau Bush on the Taieri River near the Maori Kaik at what would subsequently become Henley. To get there, the family walked up McLagan Street and then were guided across the swampy Taieri plain by Maori guides who carried the small Williams children on their backs. The land was cleared, potato and wheat was planted, and for the next 2 years, the Williams family roughed it out here in a typical colonial cottage. When sick calls came in, the doctor would slog his way across the plain to whichever pioneer home needed his services. The nearby Maori village proved kind and hospitable to their neighbours, and once the Valpys arrived in 1850, William Valpy Jr. was a regular visitor on the way to his landholding at Waihola. Dr. Williams' special skills were too valuable to be wasted, however. So in 1850, Captain Cargill asked him to move to Dunedin. He was subsequently appointed as the first coroner to the settlement and also surgeon to the very first basic hospital in Dunedin. Dr. Williams built a house at what later became called Monticello, but which he named Sunnybank after his boyhood home. From there he built up a large medical practice, travelling long distance to treat scattered patients who could often offer him no money at all for his services. But alongside all that worthy medical service, he also surged to prominence in Dunedin with his involvement in the fevered atmosphere of local politics. This included being taken to court in 1851 for violent language and threatened assault in a dispute with James McAndrew over, of all things, oatmeal sales. This was particularly scandalous when both men were justices of the peace and local magistrates. Most notorious, however, was his standing against Captain Cargill in the election for the first Otago provincial superintendent in 1853. This was the high point of agitation by the Little Enemy group, played out in lively public meetings and extravagantly worded letters to the newspaper. The Anglicans and associated dissidents were hostile to the New Zealand Company and the Otago Association, whose performance as sponsors of the settlement they found wanting. Their criticisms were forwarded to the British government, which drew hostility from their Scottish Presbyterian fellow settlers. Once New Zealand was granted self-government, however, and Otago established as one of its new provinces, these fundamental disagreements could be rechanneled into the newly created Provincial Council. Dr. Williams withdrew from the election to become provincial leader when it became clear that superior Scottish numbers would ensure a Cargill victory. And we can see here in James Brown's cartoon, Dr. Williams climbing the greasy pole while being pelted with eggs. Later, however, he became a member of the Provincial Council, as well as the Town Board and Land Board, giving him multiple platforms to express his views and become an active member of the political establishment. Robert and Sarah Williams had 3 more children in Otago, the youngest of whom, Mary Emily, was born in 1854, but died in August 1859, aged just 5 years. And that's a reminder of just how common childhood deaths were in pioneer Dunedin, where even having a top doctor as your father offered small protection against a range of prevailing illnesses. Sarah Williams then died just a month later, leaving Robert as a solo father with a growing family of children to care for. So he retired from medical practice and moved to the Molyneux district here in South Otago. When gold was discovered in 1861, Williams decided to return to England, and he booked passage on the Chariot of Fame, one of the very first ships to load up with wool to send off to Britain. But he'd suffered various accidents in the course of his arduous cross-country journeys in pursuit of his medical service here in Otago, and he hadn't really fully recovered from many of them. Nonetheless, it was quite a shock when he died suddenly at his home in Green Island Bush in 1862, just days before the ship was due to sail, and he was just 48 years old.